My colleague Vladimir Duthiers is just outside the museum alongside its curator, Kinshasha Holman Conwill, and the museum's assistant director, Mary Elliott. And, well, Vlad, it's all yours, pal.
Thanks, Josh. It is an honor to be here, not only as part of this broadcast that CBS This Morning had this morning, but also CBSN's coverage of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And Josh just introduced the two of you. You probably can't hear him, but it's such a great honor to be able to talk to both of you. Let's just talk. Let's just get right into it. Kinshasha, one of the things that I find remarkable is the number of art exhibits that are in the museum. And a lot of people will be familiar with the Underground Railroad, and they'll be familiar with, you know, the institution of slavery and some of the cultural artifacts that we have with regards to film and books and poetry. But art is not something that a lot of Americans are that well versed on, and so African American art is probably something that very few people will be familiar with as well. So give us a sense of what you tried to accomplish here and some of the exhibits that you're most proud of.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vlad. What's amazing is when you first enter the museum into Heritage Hall on the first floor, you see art. You see work by Sam Gilliam, a terrific DC artist, part of the Washington Color School. You see Chakaya Booker, a fabulous sculptor who uses recycled tires and makes gorgeous sculpture. And you'll see Richard Hunt, one of the premier sculptors of America, Chicago bred. So that tells you right off we're into something a little bit different. Then when you go up to the galleries on the fourth floor, the cultural galleries, you will see within that the visual art gallery. You'll see names that some people who know a little bit about 19th century art may know, Duncanson or a Tanner, but you'll also see some contemporary artists like Whitfield Lavelle that people aren't quite aware of, with beautiful portraits of anonymous African Americans that he's created these beautiful line drawings of. And William T. Williams, a fabulous abstract painter. Melvin Edwards, another sculptor, a sculptor who named his sculpture after Max Bond, one of the artists, the architects who designed and created this museum, along with David Adjaye and Phil Freelon, David being our principal designer. So it tells you that we can talk about art as part of the creativity of Black people, but also as part of the story of America. So those artists are part of schools like the Barbizon School or the Hudson River Painters. So we're right in the midst of all of the culture. That's where you'll find Black artists.
It's fascinating. Mary, you're one of the co-curators of the museum, and you were responsible for the exhibit Slavery and Freedom. I'm fascinated by the concept of starting there. Most people may not know that there are several levels in this museum, and several of them that go below ground. And this idea of sort of starting from the very bottom and then making your way up. Give us a sense of why the museum decided to do that, and specifically let's talk about the Slavery and Freedom exhibit.
Well, thank you. Actually, what's really exciting about that is our history gallery incorporates 3 exhibitions, including the Slavery and Freedom exhibition, Segregation, and A Changing America. What's important about that, because then you make your way up through the building and you encounter the stories on community and on culture. But what's important about that history gallery is it's foundational to the story of African Americans. And it's foundational to the story of America, because that's really what we're telling, an American story. One thing that we really want people to know is that we start this story, while it is in the beginning underground, where we're sitting now, it's beneath us. But we start the story with the story of freedom, the story of Africans, of people on the continent made up of many people, many cultures, many locations. And then we go through the progression of the development of the nation, which African Americans have been a part of from the very beginning. And another thing that we want people to see is that as you go through the history gallery and you make your way from the 15th century up to today, you'll be able to reflect on that history. You'll be able to look back. We have different vistas in each of those different levels that you can look back from the log cabin that's during Reconstruction and still have a view down to the slave cabin from the slavery period, right?
Right.
And the same that you can look back from standing in the story of 1968 to today and look back down onto the segregated rail car. So you can reflect on that history, but still look at our progression, how we've come where we are today, but also think about the many things that we still have yet to do. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, so are we. And Kinshasha, one of the things that I'm curious to learn about, when you look at some of the masters in art, if you look at the Botticellis and the Da Vincis, religion obviously played a central role in some of the things that they painted. When you look at African-American artists, the African-American struggle, the story here in the United States, is that reflected in a lot of the art?
It is. Sometimes it's very subtle. There's a real spiritual nature to a lot of the work, so that when you hear Lonnie Bunch, our director, talk about this quintessential American story, spirituality is part of that. You may see something like David Driscoll's Behold painting, which really Behold Your Son, which references the Emmett Till lynching. And it's a painting that was done right after this terrible tragedy. And you see Christ on the cross, but is it Christ or is it young Emmett? And that notion of using religion as a through line. Tanner is another artist where literal religious scenes were part of what he did. But when you look at some of the 19th century painters, when you look at pastoral scenes, there was a whole notion of a universal sense of spirituality. And I would say even in Sam Gilliam's abstract paintings, like the one that's named for the day that Dr. King was assassinated, it's abstract, yet it's rich with colors and kind of painterly technique that makes you look beyond the literal. And I think there's a kind of spirituality there.
Started from the bottom, now we hear. For me, that's why I love that concept. And, Josh, if you get a chance to get out here, and I know that you will, there are so many really, really cool exhibits in there. Not, as many people have said, not just African-American history, but American history. But for music fans, you've got to come and check out the music exhibit. They've got Chuck Berry's El Dorado Caddy in here. They've got a huge banner of Sam Cooke's. They got Louis Armstrong's horns, James Brown in the Sex Machine suit. Something I know you'll be really interested in checking out, Josh.
Of course I will, Vlad. I just wonder how they're going to get you out of there at closing time. Watching the show this morning, it was a remarkable thing to see. The cultural impact, of course, from the arts to athletics. I know that exhibit. We saw some work from James Brown today. It's a full day to spend in a very, very important place. It looks as impressive inside as it does outside, and please do wish the ladies our best efforts going forward. Again, Vladimir Duthiers, Kinshasha Holman Conwill, and Mary Elliott, a remarkable thing to behold. We thank you for it.
Thanks, Josh.